On the morning of December 10, 1968, a 300 million yen cash-laden vehicle was stolen by a disguised police officer in Fuchu City, Tokyo. It is the single largest heist in Japanese history. All that happened was just 5 minutes. He did not resort to any violence. What he used was only strategy. More than half a century later, the case remains unsolved. A total of 170,000 police officers had participated in the 7-year investigation. 780,000 images were posted throughout Japan. The number of key witnesses had reached 110,000 people, making it an unprecedented large-scale investigation. But the perpetrator had never been apprehended. In 1975, the statute of limitations for public prosecution expired. The case had become one of the most mysterious cases in the history of Japanese crime and continues to captivate the nation. On December 6, 1968, an express mail was delivered to the Kokubunji branch manager of the Nippon Trust Bank. It was not any thank you letter they would appreciate, but might have anticipated once in a while during their times of career. It was a threatening letter demanded cash, saying, "If the female bank employee does not bring 3 million yen to the designated location by 5 p.m. on the following day, the 7th, the branch manager's house will be blown up." On the following day, the 7th, a female police officer disguised as a bank employee acted as the letter instructed. At the same time, Japanese police deployed around 50 officers over the area of the cash delivery location. But the culprit did not show up. For days later, on the morning of December 10th, four employees of the Kokubunji branch left the bank at 9:15 to transport 294 million yen, about $820,000 at the time, to the Fuchu factory of the Tokyo Shibora Electric, which now called Toshiba Corporation. The money was the year-end bonuses of 4,523 factory workers. At that time, sedan-type cars, a Nissan Cedric 1900 Custom, were used as cash transport vehicles. The money was separated in 3 duralumin trunk cases, and the 4 bank employees were unarmed. It was a rainy morning. The drive would only take around 15 minutes, if the traffic are all right. The cash transport vehicle passed through the railway tracks of the JNR Chua line, drove south along Kokubunji Street, turned right at the Maisei-Gakuin-mei intersection, and arrived at the street commonly known as Gakuin-dori, literally means campus road, in Sakare-cho. When the vehicle was about halfway down Gakuin-dori, just behind the Fuchu prison, a police motorcycle suddenly appeared from behind at high speed. The police officer raised his left hand and blocked in front of the cash vehicle, forcing it to stop. For some reason, the motorcycle had a vehicle cover hooked on the back, dragging along as it drove. The driver of the cash transport car wondered if he had been speeding and checked his speedometer. He found that his driving speed was within 30 kilometers per hour. So why was he stopped? A policeman got off the motorcycle and jogged up to the vehicle. The driver rolled down the window a little and asked, "What's wrong?" The police officer then said, "I'm from Kagane Police Station. We received an emergency call from Sugamo Police Station, saying that the house of the Sugamo branch manager of your bank has been blown up. We were also informed that explosive was also planted in this car." The driver replied, "I checked it yesterday, but there was nothing like that." 2 bank employees in the back seat also checked the car, but found nothing similar. The police officer then said, "It might be under the car." So the bank employees got out of the car just to be sure. The driver turned off the engine and got out, but left the key in the vehicle. The keys were also bundled with the keys to the trunk and the derailment case. The police officer went around to the front of the vehicle and inspected around the engine, then began searching the area underneath the cash transport vehicle. For days ago, after the threatening letter incident, the bank had issued a notice to look for suspicious items. This caused bank employees fell into a tense atmosphere of searching for explosives. The motorcycle police officer crawled under the vehicle to search. Suddenly, white smoke and red flames began to appear underneath. The motorcycle police officer shouted, "There's dynamite! It's going to explode! Run away quickly!" and made the 4 bank employees evacuate the vehicle. They moved about 100 meters away of the cash transport car and took cover behind houses or fence to protect themselves from the danger of explosion. One of the bank employees stood on the road to warn other coming vehicle of the danger. A Japanese self-defense force officer who was driving in the opposite lane saw the smoke and fire rising from under the car, had tried to rush over with a fire extinguisher. The motorcycle police officer immediately climbed behind the wheel at that moment and drove off towards Fuchu Street. He ignored a red light and turned right at the jail corner intersection, almost colliding with a large dump truck, before driving off in the direction of Koigakubo. It all happened in just 3 minutes. At that time, the bank employees thought the police officer was moving the cash transport car away to avoid the risk of explosion and thought that the police officer was brave. However, the vehicle and the motorcycle police officer had disappeared from the scene, and their whereabouts were unknown. The dynamite that had fallen on the road was still emitting smoke and flames, but no matter how long they waited, there was nothing happened, let alone explosion. The bank employees approached the dynamite with trepidation and found that it was just a flare tube emitting smoke and flames. All that was left on the road was the bomb with dying smoke and the police motorcycle, with the cover sheet still attached to it. After the smoke bomb went out naturally, the driver of the cash transport vehicle, who had some knowledge about motorcycles, realized that the abandoned police motorcycle was fake. The bank employees finally realized that the brave police officer was actually an imposter and that 300 million yen in cash was taken away by a thief. It was just 180 meters away from the factory where the cash should have delivered. The Metropolitan Police Department established an emergency deployment throughout Tokyo, excluding Aizu and the Ogasawara Islands, at 9:50 a.m. to hunt down the suspect. Coincidentally, this day was the first day of the annual year-end special alert. The Metropolitan Police Department conducted checks at key locations. They focused on looking for a car of the same model as the cash transport vehicle. However, the thief has already changed to another car. After it was discovered that the car was being changed, detailed checks were carried out on all vehicles on major roads in Tokyo. As traffic congestion caused by the checkpoint worsened, the Metropolitan Police stopped the checks by the evening. Many vehicles were left unchecked. The investigation lasted until late at night, but the culprit and the cash could not be found on that day. Even in the 2020s, more than half a century after the incident, 300 million yen is still a large amount of money, enough to buy a luxurious mansion. At that time, a bowl of ramen was 120 yen. The starting salary for a university graduate was about 30,600 yen. If compared to the starting salary of 203,800 yen in 2016, the stolen amount is equivalent to about 2 billion yen, though others say it is worth 5 to 10 billion yen. In any case, it was, and still is, the largest amount ever for a cash theft in Japan. On the day of the incident, newspapers put aside the news of the 60th Extraordinary Congress held that day and featured the incident on the front page of the evening edition. The headlines read, "Just like a gangster movie," and highest losses in history. The police held a press conference immediately after the incident. One thing the thief didn't know was, among the stolen 300 million yen cash, some of the banknotes have been identified. If the thief would ever use this money, his identity would soon be disclosed. However, maybe the police were too optimistic that the perpetrator would be apprehended. They revealed the registered number of the stolen 2,000 sheets of 500 yen banknotes at the press conference. One of the reporters at the conference, Mr. Tanaka, recalled, "When I was taking notes at the press conference, I was surprised and thought, wow, you would say that. This is worth 1 million yen out of 300 million yen. So if a criminal finds out about this, he will either don't use it or throw it away." As Mr. Tanaka predicted, the investigation was not going to be easy. It was truly an unprecedented incident in Japan. No one would have imagined a thief with no guns or knives would be able to steal such a large amount of money in just 5 minutes. It was a brainy plan with precise execution. But if you look closer, you'd find an important clue on this map. At around 9 a.m. of the day of the incident, 30 minutes before the crime, given the testimonies of 4 witnesses, a man was suspiciously standing outside the Nippon Trust Bank Kokubunji branch, about 50 meters away. According to the witnesses, the suspect was 165 to 170 centimeters tall, a man in his 30s, and was wearing a raincoat. The police believed that the suspect had followed the cash transport vehicle with a green Toyota Corolla. After confirming the route, he drove to an empty lot near Maisei Gakuen High School in Sakamachi, where the fake police motorcycle was parked in advance. It was believed that the culprit then switched to the fake police motorcycle to chase the cash transport vehicle. After successfully robbing the cash car, the thief drove to the oak forest of the Musashi Kokubunji historical site in Nishimoto-cho, where another car, a dark blue Toyota Corolla, was parked in advance. The culprit took the 3 duralumin case and switched to the dark blue Corolla. He then sped away towards Kokubunji Street, almost collided with a gardener's car. The green Toyota, the car used for chasing the bank car, was left behind. When it was discovered later that day, the door was ajar, the wipers were still working, and the window was left open. Together with the fact that a seat cover was still hooked to the rear of the disguised motorcycle, the culprit was very much in a hurry and highly probable a lone offender. The bank car was also left behind. The police failed to anticipate the culprit has already changed car, was one of the reasons why the thief could not be arrested during police checkpoints. 4 months later, on April 9th, the dark blue Corolla was found in the parking lot in Hanmachi residential area. 3 empty duralumin cases were also found in the car. Aerial photos taken by the self-defense forces found that the dark blue Corolla was already in the parking lot the day after the crime. When other cars parked in the apartment complex were searched, multiple stolen cars from other incidents were discovered. It was clear that the perpetrator was meticulous and well-prepared. But the thing is, who would know on December 10th, the bank employees would deliver this amount of cash to the Toshiba factory? To park the fake motorcycle in here in advance, the perpetrator would have known beforehand that the cash carrier would drive past there. Who would he be? At the time of the incident, a group of youth gang, Tachikawa Group, had repeatedly stolen vehicles in Tachikawa City. Among them, the leader of the group, a 19-year-old man, known as S, has emerged as the chief suspect. Before the incident, he had talked about robbing Toshiba and Hitachi cash transport vehicles. In addition, his father was a motorcycle police officer and was knowledgeable about motorcycles. However, his blood type was A. The stamp of threatening letter that's sent to the bank on December 6th was affixed to the envelope by saliva. The culprit was a person in blood type B. In addition, he was said to have been drinking in the night before the incident. It was unlikely that he would be able to commit the crime in the morning. After a thorough search at his home, none of the 300 million yen cash was found. On a strange twist, on December 15th, just 5 days after the robbery, he died of swallowing potassium cyanide, which brought home by his father. The day after his suicide, the 4 bank employees who had seen the perpetrator were invited to S's house. All of them, while in the same room with the possibility of being influenced by the opinions of others, said S looks like or looks very similar to the perpetrator. However, in the bank internal report made on December 13th, the 4 bank employees were unable to provide consistent details of the perpetrator's appearance. One of them actually didn't see the culprit's face because the pillar of the car window was in the way. It was quite possible that the bank employees had testified under enormous pressure, as they might feel responsible for letting the thief running away with the key in the car, and the fact that they couldn't recognize the perpetrator's face was simply unacceptable to many. On December 21st, even without clear evidence that the young man S was implicated in the crime, even without the permission of S's parents, a photo that closely resembled S was released. The culprit was a policeman's son, became a captivating theory that the public celebrated. The police received huge amount of information as a result of the release of the image, which actually confused, if not hindered, the investigation, as the unwavering belief that the culprit should look alike the image may have been the reason of the culprits got away. 3 years later, the police's attitude finally changed. They regarded the perpetrator does not have to look like the image, which was also officially destroyed in 1974. However, the image continued to appear in mass media narratives. A 25-year-old driver, F, was listed under the suspect due to his B blood type and his strong resemblance to the image. Mainichi Shimbun, the Daily News, got the information about F from an interview with the police. On December 12th, they disclosed F's real name and a composite portrait that resembled F. As a result, the police arrested F on an unrelated charge to prevent him from escaping. But he had an alibi. He was taking a proctored examination on the day of the crime. However, media had already exposed his educational background, work history, personality, and family in detail. He was treated as the real perpetrator. As a result, he lost his job, his family was broken up. He received persistent harassment from the public and the media afterward, and had to keep changing jobs. It left him with significant psychological impact. In September 2016, he committed suicide. The police were initially optimistic that the perpetrator would be apprehended, as there were over 120 pieces of evidence left at the scene. As time went by, it was discovered that the evidence were either stolen items or mass-produced items, which had no effect on the progress of solving the case. After a 7-year investigation, Japanese police announced in December 1975 that the statute of limitations on the crime had passed. In 1988, the statute of limitations for civil cases also expired. This case remains an unsolved case in the history of Japanese crime. As the 300 million yen stolen was insured, the entire amount was covered by the compensation provided by the Japanese insurance company, and the full bonus was paid to all employees the day after the incident. The insurance company also carried out reinsurance, and the amount paid was reimbursed by a syndicate of insurance companies outside Japan, so there was no direct financial loss in Japan. The robbery was also called the robber without hatred, since the robber succeeded in stealing a large amount of cash using strategy alone, without resorting to violence. On the other hand, some people were affected by the incident and suffered strange fates or misfortune, such as S and F. And 2 police officers had died in the line of duty due to overwork during the investigation. Since then, Japan has come to recognize the dangers of transporting large amounts of cash. It became common to transfer employee salaries and bonuses to bank account. Specially trained security guards from security companies were routinely used to guard cash transports. Decades later, The crime continues to captivate the nation, spawning books, films, television dramas, and a comic book. The 300 million yen heist lives on in the popular imagination.